I'm Justin Rowe Roberts of Biz News, and with me today is independent economist Mike Schussler. Mike, you wrote an interesting related to the destruction of the manufacturing sector in South Africa. Can you give us a high-level summary of what your article outlined?
Yes, I first of all, I noted that we're back at 1969 levels in the number of people employed in manufacturing. I also noted that we actually wanted, by last year, another 350,000 people working in manufacturing from the 2007 level. And I saw that we actually lost 200,000 jobs, and therefore, or over 500,000 short. And if it wasn't for the data adjustments that Stats SA did over time, we would have been 700,000 short. So the job opportunities have gone. I then looked at the output, for example, of our manufacturing compared to other countries, and we're 15% down from our 2008 high point. Whereas even the advanced economies who've seen their manufacturing come under pressure from the emerging markets have at least held their own, and they're not in a decline that we've seen. And then on the emerging market side, it's gone through the roof, and it's not just China. I looked at other countries from Ethiopia, Egypt, and I noted that the other thing is that African manufacturing is very often growing. So if we're going to blame the Chinese, then why are the Chinese not doing the same to Egypt? Because Egypt today is the king of steel in Africa. They make the most steel. If we look further, they also employ more people in manufacturing than we do, not just in volume terms, but as a percentage of the population. The same applies to Ethiopia and to a certain extent Nigeria, but I would take a little bit of a backstep with Nigeria. There's a lot of oil platforms, and that might not always be their own people. But the fact of the matter is, there are now three African countries who employ more people in manufacturing than we do. And apart from Egypt, the other two would have had far less than us in 1990. Egypt, we probably overtook us a year or two or three before then. We don't have the full data on Egypt, but it was close between us and Egypt. Today, they employ twice as many people as we do. So the long and the short of it, we're not producing as much. We're not employing as much people. As a percentage of the world's output in manufacturing, we've gone from just under 1%, about 0.7, 0.8%, to about 0.1%. So our share has, gone down. Let's make it, 70%. And why is that? We have to ask ourselves that. And yet we've had all these plans. We have the iPad plan. Before then, we had industrialized policy and everything. We were going to fix everything. And the big question why is our high cost structure, both in terms of labor, but it's not just labor. I don't want to, go union bashing right now. I will in a different way, but I'm saying our electricity supply is not there. Our water supply is not there. Our rates and taxes are high. Um, our rail isn't working as it should be working. Again, discussions earlier today, it's clear that Transnet is not listening to very sane advice. Please maintain your locomotives. We, the private sector, will help maintain them. And we would rather not have the private sector involved in this sort of thing. And then the train system collapses or we can't provide the service. And that's actually a very big scandal that these things are happening all the time. So we don't have the transportation as we used to have. We don't have the electricity supply, and it's become more expensive. Same for water, same for a lot of municipal services. We see factories moving to other areas in the country because, for example, Clover couldn't get the water and the roads and everything. In Lichtenburg, we know Astral chickens or Astral Foods, they've got huge problems in Standerton with no water supply. I mean, we've got to understand, we've got to get the basics right, And then we've got a competition commission that is on a mission, um, much more so than the Europeans, for example, in an emerging market, where they think they have to throw their weight around. And then, we can talk about other things, but it's also quite clear that we've got a lot more strikes. So our interruptions from all angles are just not good for the modern economy that has to deal with just-in-time sort of manufacturing, that has to keep their prices low. Because remember, it's all good and well to say, oh, it's just a 2-day outage of electricity or 2 hours a day, but you still have to pay the labor for that time period. So your costs don't stop. Yes, you don't pay for the electricity that you don't use, but you've still got rent to pay, you've still got wages to pay, all those sort of things. And then we've got the BEE side of things. I call it these days black economic impoverishment, because if you look at the coal price that Eskom pays to a few people, it's gone up radically 300% in the last 12 years or so. And yet everybody pays for that. The majority of people paying for that are black, African. So these sort of BEs is an elitist deal. And we've got to get a way around that, because it's also seen as an extra tax by these companies. So they say, your country charges me a tax and a tax on dividends, and then I have to give up a share of my company. Why would I want to be there? And nobody's talking about this. We're all skirting the issues and all trying to be politically correct. But we're killing the country with political correctness. That's my problem.
You call
So
the
there's my
industrial
runt.
you call the Industrial Policy Action Plan IPAP a burden on the industry. Why is that?
Well, first of all, it's this great ideas that we come forward with and so on, but it hasn't worked. And the reason that it hasn't worked is that they didn't listen to industry. They've been working in their own silo, and they think by protecting the big boys, it's okay. They forget that the smaller companies that create more work and create value don't always want that industrial protection for, let's call it, the dinosaurs. On the other side, we don't we've given very big subsidies to the motor industry, which is great and egotistical, and we all pay more for our vehicles because of the tariff protection and the subsidies. But ultimately, where we need to create the work, say in the agricultural fields, and they compete. Our agriculture is amazing. It competes to a large extent with people with subsidies, and yet somehow agriculture has remained. But they've had to scale down on the number of people that they employ, both the farmers and the food processors and the drink processors and the like. Our wine farms and our wine exports have done brilliantly. And you can't just go anywhere with agriculture, but we've done very, very well. So I think we should have sort of looked at the subsidies of the food farms and that, because that's where our unemployment is in the rural areas. And those subsidies could have been more legal than others, because a lot of companies support subsidies to their agriculture, and then they export their chickens to us, or they export their food to us, their butter, and we sit here and we take that, and it's cheap. But we destroy our own jobs that are already quite efficient sometimes. So I think we need to re-look and have an honest look. The other thing that IPAD has always got a transformation agenda, and it's going to be an ownership change and a structural change. But these things are led from the top. They are not logical consequences of where the world is going and how we can help and tweak and so on. Government should get out of the way, but there are things that government does. I mean, government creates education. They have created a lot more people with matric. I don't know about the quality, but let's say we want people not just with matric. We want people with accounting skills specifically, or engineering skills, or programming. Those are the tweaks that a government can do to help a country. Governments typically take care of education, even in, let's call it, largely free market countries. So we need government. We're not saying we don't want government, and this is just me speaking, but I want government to do the right thing. And they should be led to a large extent by the market. The market forces are changing things. And it doesn't mean everybody needs to be a computer guy. In America, where's the shortage? And in Britain, on truck drivers, on packers, on people that do merchandising on shelves, on home care providers. That's, if you wish, the sort of hospice type thing, because many people don't want to deal with that. And we find even things like personal shoppers, motorbike drivers. Those are not necessarily high skill, but we can tie into that. And therefore, I think if we do the right things here, we can find the jobs here that we can create. We're trying to create jobs for a population that we don't have. We must create jobs for the population that we do have, and where that population is unemployed. That is very, very important. And the kickback is, if we get this right, and we change our attitude as well. That's a other big thing. Don't fight with business, help business, and come more to the side of business. You're going to need a business to grow those jobs. And also the thinking of these big companies, when the average employer has 9 people employed, the median is about 7. So, rather think in terms of small and how you can help small business. And that's not just paperwork. Sometimes it's, hey, can the guy sell his product on this road without the traffic police chasing him? Yes, safety reasons, you want him 5 meters away from the tarmac, but why can't he sell there? And let's make things happen. Yes, safety is important, health is important. Those are the rules that you enforce, but all the rest are not always sane rules. So we must work out ways that people can do things without getting every license and having to bribe officials and things like that. So yeah, I think we've got to really look at our economy, and specifically those things that give us things to sell and buy, the wine farms, the manufacturing, um, the sort of tourism areas. I think if I look at some of our beautiful places that we have, yes, COVID destroyed them, but no country has a Kruger Park like ours. No country has the sort of wildlife. Maybe Kenya does, but we've got more capacity for tourists. Um, so we should be looking at how we can tie that in with maybe manufacturing around there, not just curio little things, but how can we trace the tourist and send him more South African wine after the fact? How do we trace a tourist and sell him biltong? And how do we get that biltong into some countries where it won't be allowed? Why can't we get an exemption and that type of stuff? So, those are the sort of things I think we can look at that, but those are minor details. But the big thing is attitude. Get out the way as much as possible. Don't interfere. um, try to organize that we look at the efficiencies that we need. And there's another efficiency, just think about it. If we can get some places to work 24/7, apparently our harbors work 24/7, but the warehouses don't. So let's talk to those warehouses. Let's get that efficiency going. If the borders between us and Mozambique, it's not 24/7 yet. Let's make it 24/7. Let's make it like a drive-through. You only check every 10th or 12th truck. You don't need all this stuff. Bait Bridge is going to be a new border post. It's open already, I understand, and it's money. It's a private sector initiative, but the trucks are going to move faster and quicker, and the same with Kusile Bridge. So we've got some things that we can bang on. And if a truck passes, think about it like this: if a truck, and I come from the trucking side a bit, but if a truck doesn't have to wait 2 days at the border or 3 days, and can go right through, your fresh produce can travel further, reach a bigger market. If it same can happen from the harbor side, the same will happen there. So we've got to get those sort of things right. It lowers the cost of doing business, and it's on every level, not just exports, but selling in South Africa, setting up a factory space. It doesn't help we build markets away from where the people are. It doesn't help we they've always got these industrial parks. They're all empty. Why? Because they're not near where the demand is or on a major route, and they're hidden away, and it's some guy's backyard mechanic who had property to sell to some guy other than, who needed it. And it's that type of mess. So we've got to address things. And some things are practical, other things are political, that we've got to say BEE cannot happen. It's got to be distinguished, or at least put into a place where it doesn't bother the producing parts of the economy at all. Malaysia did the same. They got rid of all their what they call localization, and all of a sudden people started investing in Malaysia. They now have more foreign investment than their guys were, and we're the only major emerging market where more of our companies are investing overseas. I've just looked. If you look at the secondary and the primary listings, the secondary listings in South Africa are obviously those that have got a primary foreign listing. Their value is over 9 trillion. Our local value is 6 trillion. So already that gives you a very good idea how South African companies have moved. So even like somebody like Naspers, who invested a lot overseas, and 10 cents is a brilliant investment. It's not some, but they had to find a way to list somewhere else as well. And you found that with Anglo American, Investec, a lot of South African firms. And now they say, well, they've now invested here, but they haven't really made new investments here. It's their old investments that have stayed. So why is that? Because they don't want to dilute their ownership and their shares. And that's what happens very often with South African companies. And that's why they run away. And it is a running away. It's no other way to say it. And that's why I think we've got to look further than that. This is now the stock market, but I mean, it's the same play right through the economy.